Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with Courtney. She's 38 years old, was diagnosed at 29 with gestational diabetes, but later they realized she actually had LADA. She has a bit of anxiety. We talk about that and much more during this episode. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. If you are the caregiver of someone with type 1 diabetes or have type 1 yourself, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. This should take you about 10 minutes and will really help type 1 diabetes research. You can help right from your house at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. Did you know if just one person in your family has type 1 diabetes, you're up to 15 times more likely to get it too? So screen it like you mean it. One blood test can spot type 1 diabetes early. Tap now, talk to a doctor, or visit screenedfortype1.com for more info. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get your supplies the same way we do from US Med. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. This is the meter that my daughter has on her person right now. It is incredibly accurate and waiting for you at contournext.com/juicebox.
My name is Courtney, and I was diagnosed with type 1.5 LADA or LADA when I was 29 years old.
How old are you now?
I am 38.
29, 38. That's 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're not going to use actual words that would tell anybody, but did you and I go to the same high school?
No, probably not.
Probably not. You didn't go where we were talking about just now?
If you lived in where we were talking about, then no, I lived in a different part.
Gotcha. So,
but very, very close.
You taught that you're a teacher?
I was, until I do what I do now.
Do you want to tell me what you do now?
Sure. I work for a company that is contracted with the U.S. Patent Office. So I am fortunate enough to work from home, and I sit around editing patents all day.
Editing patents. And you did that from teaching. What pays better?
Probably in the long run, teaching. I mean, when you're in it for 20 plus years, that pays off. But this has allowed me to be around my children more and be there for them pretty much every step of the way. It's pretty flexible.
That's excellent.
And it's really helped me with diabetes management rather than being in a classroom and having a low blood sugar and being stressed out about it while you're trying to teach. I can take care of it and move on with my life and go back to work.
Did you enjoy teaching?
I did.
Was it a different experience with diabetes?
When I was first diagnosed with diabetes, it's actually a weird story. So I was pregnant with my daughter when I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. Mm-hmm. And they told me, oh, it's a fluke. It's probably just like, something that's just going to go away. You won't have to worry about it after you have your baby. You'll just get tested again. And then, whatever, you'll be fine. I went through pregnancy thinking I was going to be okay after having her. I was fine after having her. They tested me in the hospital, finger pricking or whatever, and I was totally fine. And then a year later, I went back for blood work. They didn't take an A1C or anything. They just took my current glucose, and it wasn't fasting. And they told me I was fine. Mm. A few months after that, I was like not well at all.
Did you call them and say, not fine, not fine?
Yeah, eventually. So, I mean, there's a whole story behind that too. Like for a few months, I was noticing really bad leg pains. Like my calves it felt like electric shock was going through them all the time. And I had really bad, like Charlie horses in my calves. I noticed I felt really dizzy or like anxious all the time. I also was experiencing like I had to go to the bathroom constantly. And I remember like thinking back, like, oh, I'm so thirsty, just so thirsty. And my mouth felt like a desert. And I, like a dope, was like, oh, I drank so much water. I should probably drink Gatorade. So would pound Gatorade after gallons of water thinking I needed it. But I mean, probably did.
Yeah. Get your electrolytes back up.
Yeah. And like, it wasn't thinking anything of it because I had no idea what DKA was.
Right.
And I, just a month before, like this September, I was tested. And when like my daughter was like 13 months old. And then by November was like the night that I was like, oh, it was Thanksgiving. My husband's family does this like really fun outing with like 80 people at this like camp they all grew up going to where they have Thanksgiving. They ran out of water. And I was having those symptoms where I was like just downing water and there were no water bottles. Mm-hmm. But I was so thirsty. So I drank soda because that's all that was left. And I felt absolutely horrible. Like I thought I was going to die.
The Contour NextGen blood glucose meter is the meter that we use here. Arden has one with her at all times. I have one downstairs in the kitchen, just in case I want to check my blood sugar. And Arden has them at school. They're everywhere that she is. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Test strips and the meters themselves may be less expensive for you in cash out of your pocket than you're paying currently through your insurance for another meter. You can find out about that and much more at my link, ContourNext.com/juicebox. Contour makes a number of fantastic and accurate meters, and their second chance test strips are absolutely my favorite part. What does that mean? If you go to get some blood and maybe you touch it and, I don't know, stumble with your hand and like slip off and go back, it doesn't impact the quality or accuracy of the test. So you can hit the blood, not get enough, come back, get the rest without impacting the accuracy of the test. That's right. You can touch the blood, come back and get the rest, and you're going to get an absolutely accurate test. I think that's important because we all stumble and fumble at times. That's not a good reason to have to waste a test strip. And with the Contour NextGen, you won't have to. ContourNext.com/juicebox. You're going to get a great reading without having to be perfect. Diabetes comes with a lot of things to remember. So it's nice when someone takes something off of your plate. US Med has done that for us. When it's time for Arden's supplies to be refreshed, we get an email. Rolls up and in your inbox says, "Hi, Arden. This is your friendly reorder email from US Med." You open up the email. It's a big button that says, "Click here to reorder," and you're done. Finally, somebody taking away a responsibility instead of adding one. US Med has done that for us. An email arrives, we click on a link, and the next thing you know, your products are at the front door. That simple. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. I never have to wonder if Arden has enough supplies. I click on one link, I open up a box, I put the stuff in the drawer, and we're done. US Med carries everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Libre 3 and the Dexcom G7. They accept Medicare nationwide, over 800 private insurers, and all you have to do to get started is call 888-721-1514 or go to my link, usmed.com/juicebox. Using that number or my link helps to support the production of the Juicebox podcast. Adding all that sugar and your body was just like, I cannot process any of this. Your blood sugar was probably super high at that point, everything.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I remember we were driving home and it was like an hour and a half away from our house at the time. Just thinking like, I think I have the flu. Like I'm really not okay. still not putting it together. Still didn't think it was anything related to diabetes. It was 2 months ago, had the blood test done, and they're like, you're fine.
Yeah,
I think my blood sugar was like 110 when they told me I was fine.
Oh, Courtney, let me make sure I understand. Gestational diabetes, in your mind, that's a thing that happens when you're pregnant. It goes away. You had a follow-up. They said everything's fine. And so your brain's never going to go back there again.
Correct.
I would imagine. And this DKA feels like the flu at first, like that, just like body beat up feeling.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. So we go home Thanksgiving night. I just try to like sleep it off, not thinking anything. And actually, like, I get through like the next couple of days and I'm like surviving. And I don't know how, but I guess my body still worked somewhat to the point where it must have brought it down to probably still a really high level, but like high enough that I guess my body was just accustomed to it. From being high for, I guess, the past couple of months, at least. Then my husband and I, we had like a family photo shoot and we went out to dinner and I got pasta. And that night I shot out of bed and I was like, I feel horrible. And something told me, go get your meter from pregnancy. So I did. And my blood sugar was like 438.
Wow, it finally hit you. But you don't know why, right? It just jumped in your head?
Yeah, something just said like, you're not okay. Like something isn't right. And I had realized that I had lost a ridiculous amount of weight in like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. But nothing about the way you felt mimicked how you felt when you were pregnant, did it?
No, nothing. I didn't need insulin while I was pregnant. I went to the nutritionist. I ate the amount of carbs that they told me to eat during meals, and I never had a problem. I stayed within range almost the entire time until the last 3 weeks of my pregnancy. My fasting started creeping up over like 105. So they added glyburide to my regimen, and it was a very small dose.
Yeah.
But looking back, also not a good option for someone who's really, type 1 and not, just gestational. Instead of like thinking I need to go to the emergency room, because honestly, I didn't know enough about diabetes to know. Mm-hmm. So what did I do? I go for a run with my dog at 1:30 in the morning around the neighborhood.
Why? Why did you do that one?
Because I was always told that walking worked. And it did while I was pregnant. I would, if I was like 150 or something, I immediately would pound water and go for a walk, and I would be brought back into range. Like, I just think I was like out of my mind at that point and in denial. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Can I stop you for a second? Is there any other type 1 in your family?
No.
Autoimmune of any kind? Thyroid, celiac?
No.
Okay.
So, well, I mean, this is what doctors have told me. It's unrelated. I do have a cousin on my dad's side. He has type 1. He was diagnosed at 8, but that's it. And every doctor has said that's not related because it's not your father, your mother, your sister, your brother.
I mean, I get what they're saying, but I don't know. It seems related to me. Like my wife's brother's kid has an autoimmune issue. My wife's sister's daughter has PCOS. Like, that don't sound related to you? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
How about during the pregnancy and the gestational stuff, they were probably like, wow, you're a light case. So it was probably almost in the back of their head, you being gestational. But no one said this increases your risk for type 2 diabetes later in life. They didn't even tell you that?
They did tell me that.
They did. Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
They said within like, I don't know if it was like within 5 to 10 years, your risk increases by like 50%. And I'm just throwing that out there because it's been a long time.
Sure.
But like, I remember reading that and going, what the heck? This stinks. And
these
then
kids
also,
better be
like,
amazing.
Yeah. Like at the time, like I was doing CrossFit workouts with my husband. I was doing them while pregnant with my daughter. Yeah. So like in my head, I'm like, yeah, right. I'm not going to end up like that.
Yeah. One of these kids better end up being the CEO of IBM or something. I'll tell you, like it's a big trade-off here. Tell me though, you're out for the run with the dog. Go back to that.
So I'm running around the neighborhood. I don't sleep at all because I'm in like sheer utter panic. And I'm telling my husband, like, diabetes is back. I have diabetes. Like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, oh, it'll go down in the morning. Like, and then we'll call the doctor. So hours and hours later, I'm still sitting at like 279, according to my meter. Like, and that was that morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I dropped my daughter off to my mom, and then I'm like, we need to go, like, because I need to be diagnosed. And it was a Sunday, so like my doctor wasn't open. So we go to the ER, and they do all kinds of blood work, and they're like, oh, well, you're not in DKA, so that's good, but you have type 2 diabetes. Here's metformin, and your A1C is 10.5, and you're just going to need to follow up with your doctor.
Courtney, you're not going to get a lucky break in the beginning of this story at all, are you?
No.
No. Okay. So
it gets better.
Oh, go ahead, please. I want to know.
So I go to my doctor and I meet with her, and she's like, and thank God for her, honestly, my family doctor. And she looked at me and said, no, you're not a type 2. There's no way. They've got it wrong. I'm going to test you for type 1. And I'm sitting there like, I don't even know what that is. Like, what is that? What's the difference? And why?
Right.
And she's like, because you're a young, healthy, active, there's more to this story. There's no way. So she did. And my C-peptide was normal, which was nice, but my GAD was positive. And that was the only one that I had positive. And she said, that's all it takes. And then right then and there, she said, you have a slower progressive form of type 1.
She called it LADA.
Yes.
Okay.
And then referred me to an endocrinologist. So off I went. I went to my endocrinologist, who then refused to give me a title. She said, I don't know what you are.
From the very beginning, your kids mean everything to you. That means you do anything for them, especially if they're at risk. So when it comes to type 1 diabetes, screen it like you mean it. Now, up to 90% of type 1 diagnoses have no family history. But if you have a family history, you are up to 15 times more likely to develop type 1. Screen it like you mean it, because type 1 diabetes can develop at any age. And once you get results, you can get prepared for your child's future. So screen it like you mean it. Type 1 starts long before there are symptoms, but one blood test could help you spot it early, before they need insulin, and could lower the risk of serious complications like diabetic ketoacidosis or DKA. Talk to your doctor about how to screen for type 1 diabetes, because the more you know, the more you can do. So don't wait. Tap now or visit screenedfortype1.com to learn more. Again, that's screenedfortype1.com. And screen it like you mean it. You're like, I've seen 3 people and somehow there's two options and 3 people said 3 different things.
Yeah, I wanted to cry.
Yeah, I bet. I'm sorry. That's terrible. So which one did you end up believing? How did you move forward?
It was when I went to my second endocrinologist. My family doctor eventually moved to a new practice. So she said to me, it doesn't matter. But the first endo, who said she didn't know what I was, she said, yeah, your GAD, came back high, but it's really not as high as I've ever seen. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And she couldn't really give me an answer. She's like, well, your numbers are fine right now. You don't need insulin right now. So we're just going to keep you on the metformin. And that was fine with me because, at the time, taking insulin for everything scared the ever-living crap out of me.
Yeah.
And because I just didn't know. At the same time, though, they're like, oh, test your blood sugar 4 times a day. Well, at that time, my husband is a carpenter in the carpenters union here.
Mm-hmm.
And so our insurance is a little bit different. It's funded by the union. And no diabetes testing supplies were covered, period. None.
No, they were just that doesn't exist on our formulary. Good luck. Nice.
Yeah, basically. So I was like, what? So for me to be able to test, and I didn't know that you could go get a Walmart brand meter or whatever. And so I'm like buying the AccuCheck, which is what I was given during pregnancy. And it was like $150 a month. And my husband and I were young and still like figuring out life at that time. So it was like a huge blow just financially to have to deal with that.
Right.
CGMs, like I didn't even know they existed. I didn't know about Dexcom. I knew nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I continued to lose weight because I just started restricting myself so much that I turned into like basically this skeleton of myself.
You've got shaky information from doctors, even though one of them got it right, but it's confusing enough. There's shaky information from doctors. You're on a medication you shouldn't be on. You're having trouble paying for the stuff that you need. You don't even really know why you're using it or what it is you're supposed to be doing. All that fear culminates into you slowing down, just not eating
And over exercising.
Trying to keep away. What did you think? Were you trying to keep away type 2 diabetes in your mind, or did you not know what you were doing?
I had no idea what was going on. Mm-hmm. My mind and heart told me, you probably have what your family doctor said, because I looked it up and I'm like, this makes sense. That it was probably never gestational to begin with, and that it was brought on by my pregnancy and the stress on my body from being pregnant.
How long did it take you to believe yourself?
I want to say after my second pregnancy.
How long is that since the end of the first?
My son and my daughter are almost exactly 3 years apart, and my daughter was roughly 15 months old when I found out I was some sort of diabetic.
So you maybe lived for almost maybe 4 years as a type 1 with LADA, not 100% sure, or treating it with insulin or anything like that.
That part is not 100% true.
Okay.
So, I mean, I did end up on insulin, but I was going to my endo and I knew I wanted to have another baby. So it was like maybe a year into, my diagnosis, about a year. And I had my A1C came down from 10.5. I was like 6.3 on no insulin, but I was so underweight. She was like, you have to gain weight or you're not going to be able to carry a baby. Like, you're just not. So I had to then figure out how to eat lots of calories so that I could have another baby.
And you said to her, I'm not eating. I'm over exercising. Like, did she know that part, or did she just think you were losing weight? Because I don't know why she wouldn't think, if she didn't know what you were doing at home, I don't know why she wouldn't think DKA. You know what I mean?
She did know that I was losing weight, and I told her that I eat low carb. So maybe she thought that was why.
You were turning into an Instagram model. Yeah, I gotcha. Courtney's like, I'm 38. I don't really look at Instagram that often, but I kind of get what you're saying.
No, I'm 38. I look at Instagram, not TikTok.
Oh. She probably thought you were just like doing keto or something like that, right?
Yeah, essentially I was, because that's what I joined like Facebook groups, and because I didn't have any information, I didn't know where to turn or who to talk to. The diabetic educator I went to see was telling me to eat all these carbs that I wasn't comfortable with eating, because every time I did, obviously my blood sugar was going high. So like I was getting stressed out, and no one apparently thought I needed insulin at the time because my A1C was good.
How long until they gave you insulin?
So it was when I finally got pregnant with my son. I was about 15 weeks, and I ended up with a stomach virus that my daughter had passed to me. And I could not keep my blood sugar down. And I couldn't get under like 200, which now I'm like, that wouldn't be that concerning, knowing numbers that I've hit now without even trying.
I like that you said without even trying.
Yeah, like I could just be stressed out, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoop, boom. 200. Super stressed about that. She put me on Levemir, a long-acting, to try. I was terrified. I had my husband do the first couple of injections until I was like, all right, I could do this myself. Let's go away. And that worked out great. And then eventually towards the end of my pregnancy, I added in mealtime. And I'll tell you, when that happened, that was the most terrifying experience of my entire life. I still have nightmares and stress, and this is why I still have a hard time taking like larger doses of insulin to cover a lot of carbs.
What happened?
Because my endo gave me the wrong information, and I don't go to her anymore. I left, but I didn't know any better.
What happened? Tell me the story.
When she's decided to add in mealtime insulin, she said, take 2 to 3 units with every meal. And I'm like, okay, but you do know that I eat low in carbs, right? And she said, yeah, so take 2 units. And I was like, okay. So that night I took 2 units with my dinner. Again, pregnant, no CGM, just finger pricking at least 12 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I know, I am shaking like 45 minutes to an hour later, just shaking uncontrollably. I'm like, oh, this is not good. And I check my blood sugar and it's 38.
Oh. Were you still falling?
I'm panicking.
Yeah, I bet you are. Was it like, I guess you don't know because you weren't wearing a CGM,
Nope.
right? Okay. All right.
Nope. I wouldn't have had any idea. I had no clue. My husband was giving my daughter a bath and I was freaking out. Like I drank juice. There was like leftover birthday cake on the counter. I downed that. I ate a brownie and then I just sat on the floor in the kitchen and cried for a straight hour, testing until I finally came back up. But I think about that moment and I still have like nightmares about that. Like,
did you tell the doctor about the experience?
Yeah.
Did you get a response?
It was just like, oh, well, you probably should have eaten more carbs.
Not, hey, I told you to take too much insulin there, huh? Sorry.
No.
Nice. What kind of doctor? Is this the endo?
That's my endocrinologist. Yes, was.
I was going to say not anymore, right?
No.
Gotcha. I want to talk a little more about this. So you're sitting on the floor crying. Did you have a feeling like I almost killed myself just now? Like where was the fear? Like, I don't know how to explain what I want from you, but I want you to tell me what aspect of that story scared you.
Well, the fact that I knew I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have the right person to help me. Mm-hmm. And I was afraid I was eventually going to die from taking too much.
Yeah. Okay. So it just felt like you were on a path that was probably going to end very badly and there was no answers. Yeah. I see. Okay. Wow. That's an existential crisis. Did you talk to your husband about it?
Yes.
Did he say, I'm a carpenter, I'm going to go to work now, leave me alone? Or was he helpful? I know a couple trade guys, so I'm not sure which one. I'm not sure what guy you married. I'm trying to figure it out.
No, I am very, very lucky.
Good.
My husband is super sweet, even to this day. Like right before talking to you, he texted me while he's, working. How's it going? How are your numbers? Because I guess he kind of wants to figure out what kind of day I'm having, so he knows what to expect.
I think he's planning on whether or not to work overtime or not. Is that what's going on? I might grab a couple hours, Courtney. I'm going to hang out.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Does your blood sugar affect your mood?
When it's like a stubborn high, and I mean like high, like 200, and I'm like injecting, walking. Yeah, then I'm mad. I'm not necessarily mad because like the blood sugar makes me feel that way, but I'm mad because what I'm doing is not working. So
I gotcha.
My kids know like when mommy's on the treadmill, stay away.
I don't see any of you working towards the CEO of IBM thing, by the way. Is it isolating? Because you work from home too. So at one point you said you were a teacher and there were things to be concerned about blood sugars while you were teaching, but now you're at home. Is one better? I mean, were there any type 1s or people with diabetes at work? Was that even something that could be helpful to you?
No, not when I was teaching. It really wasn't. The funny thing is, though, when I was diagnosed with gestational and, I had my little mini meltdown because I didn't even know what that meant. I was teaching at an elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that one of my friends who was a teacher had type 1. I didn't even know.
There was somebody you could have spoken to, but nobody knew about it. It's interesting.
Well, somebody mentioned it to me like, oh, you should go talk to this person because she has type 1 diabetes and I bet you she could help you, like learn about gestational and give you some tips. And I'm like, okay. So I go to her and I'm like, hey, I had no idea. And yeah, she did help me. And I remember like crying to her about it. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, she must have looked at me like, girl, you have no idea. Like, you're crying over gestational diabetes. You have no idea.
She's like, yours is going to go away.
Yes. And then we still talk now. And she's like shocked at like how that happened.
What happened to you? The progression of what happened to you.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, Courtney, from listening to the podcast, that your story is incredibly common for people who are diagnosed like this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that make you feel any better or worse?
I wouldn't say better and I wouldn't say worse, but I would say just not alone, because I felt so isolated before. Like no one in my orbit really understood what I was going through. And, you know, my own doctor who diagnosed me with LADA was like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be like brushing your teeth. You know, you'll get the hang of it. And I'm like, now I look back at it, I'm like, you had no idea what you were saying because no, it's not. Every day is different.
So you're running into what, you know, happens to so many people. You're finding doctors that just don't really know about this. Even though they're endocrinologists, they just probably see more type 2s than type 1s to begin with, or they don't know enough about it to give valuable information. And here we are. Like, you know what I mean? Like so many people are treated the way you are. And I don't mean treated poorly. I mean, like medically treated. Like this is how they think to tell you to do it. Like, you'll figure it out. It'll be okay. Try 3 units.
Right.
3 sounds like too much. Do 2. 2 almost killed you. Oops. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing actionable in any of your interactions so far. Like no one has said one thing to you that you could go home and go, oh, I'll follow these steps and I'll see what happens and I'll have an outcome and then I can make an adjustment. Like nothing has, you're just like left blowing in the wind is how it feels, honestly.
That's exactly how it felt.
Okay. All right. Well, then
Oh, sorry.
No. The anxiety you talked about in your note, did that exist for you before diabetes?
I mean, here and there, I think like as a typical person, I mean, I feel like when you're a teacher, there's always an element of anxiety because you're a perfectionist. You want to do a great job and you're constantly working and busy. And I didn't have any kids yet. So that was my baby. And that would stress me out sometimes, especially because I was a special education teacher. There's added elements to that are a little stressful and anxiety inducing.
Mm-hmm. My sister-in-law is an administrator for special ed. And so I hear a lot about this and I know it can be difficult. My niece actually is a special education teacher now and she's been bitten. That does sound stressful to me. So not a crazy amount of anxiety like prior, just normal being around life. And is it ramped up now? Is it not going away?
100%. I mean, I do go to therapy to help deal with my anxiety surrounding it. I started that 2 years ago. It's been helpful.
Good.
Yeah, my anxiety is pretty bad. It got to a point where I was like, I'm afraid of my own body, mainly because it's progressed. And I had a really hard time wrapping my head around it. Like after my son was born, I didn't need insulin anymore.
Oh, for how long?
Well, I'm thinking because it had to do with nursing him, but like for at least 9 months.
Not even basal?
I think I was taking like, once I started taking it again, like 3 or 4 units a day.
Wow. That's interesting. For 9 months as a type 1? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And I was fine. Like I was eating more carbs than I had in the previous years, like 2 years, because I was nursing him and I was still going low. I would nurse and then all of a sudden, bam, like dropping like a tank. So I couldn't use insulin.
How, if at all, was your doctor helpful with that transition?
Well, at that point I had a new endocrinologist.
And this one's better? Fingers crossed?
She was better. Yes, she really was.
Okay.
She had the mindset of saying, nope, you're a type 1. You're at a point now where like you're going to progress, but here, like you're still making some on your own, and we'll just kind of keep going with the flow. And as your needs progress, we'll just keep adding. And at that point, she was at least able to write me a script for a Freestyle Libra, the original, like, I guess it was a 10-day one. And I just paid out of pocket. So I had that. And then she had the mindset of, listen, this is your life and you have to manage diabetes. So whatever you need, if insurance denies it, I'll write letters until they approve it. Yeah. So I'll do it for you. So she was great.
Let me ask you a question.
And then,
wait, no, I want you to finish first though. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh no. And then I moved, and then it took me like an hour and a half to get to her. So I don't live there anymore. But yeah, so I had to find another endocrinologist.
Were you able to find a decent one near you?
I did, and she was absolutely amazing.
What happened?
And
Did she get hit by a car?
Practice, I found out.
She sold the practice.
She just left the practice. Yeah.
She's like, see you suckers. I'm out of here.
I cried.
Oh my God. I feel like I know your story now. Like, and I want to kind of shift a little bit to talking about, I want to try to figure out how to get you out of this place that you're at right now, where you seem a little frozen, and just by asking you, what do you think you need? Like, what would make all of this better for you? Doesn't even matter if it's reasonable. Just tell me what it is you would need.
I guess just someone to take the fear away. Like, I don't know how to get past it, because it just seems like everything is constantly changing on me. I think I need consistency. Maybe if I knew what to expect, I would feel better. But I feel like every day is just, it's nuts. I mean, the past couple of nights I've had lows in the middle of the night. And last night I was like high all night long. Not high, but like higher than I want to be. Like 130 all night long. I like to be at like 100.
You said Omnipod. Are you using Dash?
No, I'm not using a pump at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're not using a pump at all. You do have a CGM though.
I have the Dexcom 7. I use the InPen, which is what I'm really comfortable with. I do really like it.
Okay.
And I use Levemir.
Okay. So I can say, would your insurance cover a more modern basal insulin like Tresiba?
I believe that is the one that would be covered.
That might be a good place to start, because you're probably, I mean, I'd be doing a lot of guessing here, but Levemir doesn't really last 24 hours the way they say. So if you're experiencing like higher blood sugars 18-ish hours after you shoot your Levemir, that wouldn't surprise me. You could try.
I've been splitting it up into 2 doses for that reason.
You are splitting it. Oh, okay. I don't know. I would try the more modern basal. I think that's a good step. Are you against having a pump?
I just don't think I'm ready for it yet. I'm scared. I'm scared of, the things that can happen with the pump, the malfunctioning. Like, my brain cannot handle seeing a 300 blood sugar like ever. So if like it fell off, or like, if it was malfunctioning and I wasn't getting any insulin, the thought of that scares me to death. But like the fact that I know if I'm injecting a long acting and I got it, I feel safer.
I hear this from people constantly, but normally from newer diagnosed people. How long, because of the whole thing you just explained to me for the beginning of this episode, how long do you forget the calendar? I know how long you've had diabetes. How long do you feel like you've had it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, a long time. It feels like I don't really remember eating normal, like regular, like a big piece of pizza or whatever.
Because it's not an argument, but the perspective of, at least if I shoot the basal insulin, I know it's in there. Or if the machine, revolts and takes over and I'm fighting with Skynet or something like that, when people are like, I don't know what the pump's going to do. Like, that usually is an argument from more newly diagnosed people, not usually from people who've had it as long as you've had. So you're still scared of, like, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but, I don't think there are a ton of examples throughout the world of insulin pumps like going crazy and killing people. You know what I mean? Or suddenly
Right.
not working and your blood sugar shooting up. And by the way, you're wearing a CGM. If your blood sugar started shooting up and you bolus and nothing happened, you could just change your pump. Like it's not, and you work from home. So this is a great time to get accustomed to it. So you're doing that thing where I would normally say fear is a waste of imagination. Like you're deciding to believe what could go wrong. And that's the reality you're working from. That's what does that feel accurate to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to stop that or no?
I do want to stop that. I feel like I would like a little more freedom, but I also know mentally where I can't and can handle things. And it's just a fear. I'm scared that I will do something wrong and end up like at 300 and then have like a panic attack at the same time, which will send my blood sugar higher. And
do you
I don't know.
Do you have panic attacks, like legitimate panic attacks?
I haven't in a while, but when I'm going low and I don't understand why, yeah, that might set one off.
So does the low bother you or does the unknown about why it happened bother you?
Both.
Both. Which is more strong for you?
Probably the unknown,
because oh my God, what happened?
I like to be prepared.
Yeah. This goes right back to your first example with the injection and the sitting on the kitchen floor being upset. Like I think what you hated about that most was the unknown part of it. Is that accurate? Yeah. Like, so you're comfortable stopping a low blood sugar. You know how to do that. You're not scared of that?
No.
Okay. Yeah. You don't like, well, that's interesting. Is this a thing you're working on with your therapist specifically?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Are we getting anywhere? Is the therapist any good?
She's great.
Good.
I love her.
Good.
Yes, I mean, I'm slowly moving towards considering a pump more and more.
Listen, I don't think anyone needs a pump, but if you're telling me you're getting low overnight, and I'm thinking these algorithms are pretty great right now, like, you know what I mean? Like it's stopping stuff like that. How low were you overnight?
2 nights in a row, I hit 59, and it took a while to come up. And I think though it was my activity level. I had like 17,000 steps the one day. And then the next day it was like 13,000 steps and I had done a workout. I was just moving a lot. And I think that had to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think, the change of season, my doctor said to me before, like, oh, when summer comes, you're probably going to need to start lowering some of your long acting. And maybe that's now, because all winter I felt like I struggled really hard. I was either taking too little or taking too much. And it was getting really frustrating in the winter.
Does your activity change from summer to winter?
I mean,
it sounds
yes
like you exercise,
no.
though.
I mean, I'm outside more now, like playing with my kids. But in the winter, I had a really good regimen of getting up and working out, and then working out would send my blood sugar up in the morning along with the dawn phenomena. And then I would walk on the treadmill to lower it. And then I would work. And then on my breaks, I would take walks on the treadmill. And it wasn't like I was inactive.
So your workouts in the morning are weight based? You're lifting and that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Okay. And that, did you ever try bolusing for it?
I did. I was really working on that for a while, like taking a half a unit to a unit, depending on what I was, just to see what would happen. But then I went to a different diabetic educator, and she said, well, I would rather you walk on the treadmill to lower it after your workout than take insulin for the workout, because what if you have like a rebound low from the workout, which actually did happen to me yesterday.
That happened to you, yeah. But did you take insulin for it?
I did. I was sitting at like 150 right after lunch, maybe like an hour and a half after lunch. And I thought, all right, well, I'll take a half a unit. And I knew I was going to do this weight training workout. And it was strictly weights. It was no cardio. And maybe 2 hours later, I was sitting in the 50s and we were out. And I, luckily had stuff with me, but we were sitting in traffic and I'm just feeling like trash.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck? Like any other time, my blood sugar goes up.
Yeah, the anaerobic stuff puts your blood sugar up most times. Is there, I hate to ask you this as we don't know each other, but this example of you being out and getting low after an anaerobic workout, are you by any chance within 5 or 6 days of your period starting?
No.
Ending?
No.
Interesting. That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, listen, a diabetes educator telling you not to use insulin for anaerobic workouts, I think is a little short-sighted. I mean, I think that's kind of the way you have to manage that stuff. I think you need some consistency, something to count on. Does that make sense? Like, at least, have you ever listened to the Pro Tip series that I did?
Yes,
Okay.
I have.
So does that
multiple times over the years.
Does that one idea of like, at least when I do something, I know that what happens next is from me. Does that resonate with you?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's what I feel like you don't have enough of. You don't have enough of, hey, I might be low, but at least I know why. And you know what I mean? Like that, I think that would help you a little bit. Like the knowledge that I did this and then this happened. So the next time I do it, my expectation is that's going to happen. If it doesn't, okay, but it's going to happen enough that it'll feel reasonably consistent to me. Hey, have you ever had your thyroid checked?
Yes.
What's your TSH?
And it's always been fine.
Do you know what the number was for the TSH?
Oh my gosh, the last time I had it done, it was a while ago because my endo left. So I was supposed to go in March, but she was gone.
Because they'll tell you it's in range, even if it's a little high and needs medication sometimes.
No, I'm pretty sure it was like completely normal because my therapist actually, I talked to her about it and she's also very knowledgeable in that stuff.
Yeah.
And she made me look at it again and tell her
because of the anxiety piece,
what it was.
Like, because
Yes.
anxiety is like a hypothyroidism, like definitely could come from that. Also being having like uneven mood swings, weight gain, hair loss, dry skin. There's a lot of stuff that could come from that. So
I don't have any.
You don't have
though.
any of that. How about, you're just anxious. You're like, no,
Yeah.
no, I just have anxiety. Thank you.
Yep.
But anxiety that you might have had your whole life and was made worse by diabetes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody
sure.
else in your family anxious? Mom, dad?
Yeah. My mom's a worrier for sure. My grandmother was the same way. She was definitely a worrier. And sometimes, I can see myself sitting in it like that, just holding on to it for some odd reason, even though, my husband's not like that. And I think that's why we work. He is a go with the flow, relaxed, don't worry about it until it happens kind of guy. And
that doesn't help you, right? Like his relaxed.
It does.
Does it? It brings you down a little bit. That's nice.
It helps me because if I see him worried, then I know, oh, I probably really should be worried.
He looks upset. We're going to die.
Yeah. And usually he's like, it's fine. And it's usually fine. Like, I mean, and we've been together for 22 years. So I know what to expect from him. He's my rock and I don't know what I would do without him.
Oh, well, I'm glad it helps. Background, English, Irish, something like that?
German.
Okay. How do your parents handle the anxiety? Do they drink?
I occasionally, but not excessively.
Not for medication purposes?
No.
Okay. So it's not harsh then throughout your family either. Just a little more like yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you tried medication? I mean, it's not my favorite answer, but have you ever tried something?
I did. And I really didn't like how it made me feel.
Yeah.
And my husband said he thought I actually seemed more angry while on it. And I was on it for maybe 3 months. And I kind of agreed with him.
I'm laughing because he said more angry, not angry. He was like, oh, the anger is turned up. What'd they give you? Wellbutrin?
No, it was Zoloft.
Okay. Interesting. Would you try another one or it's an excursion, right? It takes like 6 months to try it and see if you like it. Then you got to get off it. If you don't like it, it's a lot, right?
Yeah, I feel like I do a good job of controlling like my everyday anxiety. They basically told me like, if you're just sitting anxious all day over nothing, that's a problem. And I don't have that. The anxiety occurs when it comes to like when I'm low in the middle of the night and it's not coming back up. Or like yesterday, that was stressful because again, didn't know why it wasn't coming back up as fast as I wanted it to. I mean, it was going on for a while. The other thing, like this other issue I was having was hours after eating. And I had listened to your podcast episodes about like fat and protein and all that, because that's a lot of what I eat and a lot of vegetables. But for some reason, like hours after eating, I'm like spiking. And I couldn't figure out what the heck is happening. Like I'll eat dinner at 4:30, 5 o'clock. As soon as 7 o'clock hits, I'm just spiking and I'll keep spiking no matter how many times I correct until like 10 o'clock. And I could be at like anywhere between 200 and 230. And then I'm just like mad. Like what? Like why are my corrections not working at all? I am using my ratio. I've even tried like splitting it, like knowing, okay, high fat protein, or trying to calculate for protein and taking that like at the meal or right after eating. I just felt like, and then I even tried just not eating and seeing what happens. Like just not eating from like 2 o'clock on, and I would still at 7 o'clock just be like, oh, here we go. Here's this rise. And I'm like, but if I increase my Levemir or change the time, for some reason that wasn't working either. Like I just couldn't figure it out.
You're describing a scenario where I believe you would enjoy an algorithm-based insulin pump. Yeah. Because then that rise starts to happen. The pump starts pushing back. It never gets that high and you don't get low afterwards because it cuts basal then to make up for the difference. Like that. I mean, I don't want, I had this feeling while you were talking earlier that if we could start you on a pump and then put you asleep for the first 6 months while you learned it and you just woke up and it was working really well, like that would be perfect for you. Like I don't know that telling you to do it would be valuable for you because I'm not sure of the impact that the first part's going to have on you, the adjustment and the learning part. And
yeah, I hear that's not fun.
yeah. But at the same time, you're paying a lot of attention to your diabetes. Like, you know, a lot, like, so I don't think you'd be lost, but there would be a learning curve. And then I think once the learning curve's over, I think you love it. I just don't want the learning curve to send you, I was going to say off the deep end, but that's not a fair assessment of you. But like, you know what I mean? Like push you further in the wrong direction, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, that makes sense.
Is that your concern?
I'm like a person who doesn't like change. And I think I just want things to stay the same and easy like anybody does.
Is this easy or is it just something you're accustomed to?
It's not easy, but I don't like, I feel like I'm still somewhere in between. Like, I feel like there are some days I barely have to take insulin still.
Yeah.
And then there are other days where I'm taking 10 more units than I was like 2 weeks before that. So I don't know. It's just those weeks are easy. Those weeks I'm like, I'm fine. I got this. And then, you know, comes the resistance from hormones and I'm like, you know, miserable. And I know that a pump would probably really help that.
Do you care if the pump has tubing or not tubing? Have you thought about that?
I would prefer no tubing.
No tubing. Would you build your own algorithm? Like a DIY algorithm?
I'd probably be a little afraid to do that, not knowing what I'm doing.
I think Omnipod 5 might, I mean, if you jump around significantly with your needs, Omnipod 5 might still require you to do some bolusing more than you're imagining. And I don't know if maybe the Control IQ would be better for you, but then you're going to get tubing. So, I mean, there's going to be gives and takes through the entire process there. I would think, I mean, honestly, I think best case scenario for you is probably, you know, a loop with an Omnipod, but there's some stuff to do in there. Obviously you have to build the algorithm yourself. And I don't know if that's the thing you want to be involved in, but still for mitigating lows, for addressing rises as they're happening and not after they've happened, any of these algorithms is going to be good for you. Not iLet. I don't think you wouldn't do well with that, but the rest of them, even the Medtronic, the 780G, I think they'd all work for you. but you have the Dexcom G7. So at the moment, the only thing you could do with G7 is tandem or loop.
Mhm.
I don't know when Omnipod 5 is going to be work with G7. It's May 30th right now. So, I mean, I expect it soon, but I don't honestly know. Has any of this been helpful for you at all? This conversation? Like, why did you want to come on the podcast?
I don't know. I just wanted to tell my story with diabetes because I don't put a lot out there, and maybe I should try to, make people more aware, because actually not long after my diagnosis, so probably my son was born, he's going to be 7 now. So maybe he was like 2 or 3. One of my husband's childhood good friends I saw ended up being diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic. And I thought, no way, you are not a type 2 diabetic. And I messaged him and I said, you have type 2 diabetes? And he was like, yeah, I was just diagnosed. I'm like, who's your doctor? And he had the same endocrinologist that I first had.
Oh.
And he was a tall, skinny guy. And I said, you need to get tested for type 1. Please go get tested. And he did. And it turns out he has type 1.
How about that? Look at you saving lives over there. It stops somebody from having your whole situation. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Look at you.
And it's just weird that it was someone that like I knew for years.
That's lucky. Lucky for him. Did it make you feel better? Did it make you feel a little bit like your experience was more valuable now because it helped somebody else?
Yeah, it did. It really did.
Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you this one kind of question. It's just, I think the question that pops into people's heads all the time when you're talking about anxiety and this. So you have this anxiety. It's stopping you from doing something. When you talk about doing it, you sound like you want to do it, but then you fall back into, it's like this analysis that you go back into. And then you seem like you're stuck in the analysis of it, like waiting for this perfect answer to move forward in. Does it feel like that, or is it just how I'm hearing it?
No, that's exactly how it feels.
Okay. Don't do that isn't an answer that helps you, right?
No. That's why I'm going to therapy to work through these things. It really does. It really does help to do that. And I am working through it. I'm getting better at it.
Sounds like it. Honestly, I'm trying to paint a picture for anybody who doesn't have anxiety, who's listening to you. What they just heard was, hey, this lady knows what to do and she's not doing it. And if I was her, I'd just do it. Probably they feel like that because they don't have anxiety. But like, it's just worth saying out loud because it does sound like to a person who wouldn't understand anxiety, you don't actually have a problem. You're just making the wrong decision, but you're making that decision pushed by the anxiety. It's not your conscious mind telling you what to do. It's the anxiety telling you what to do. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't want to blame it solely on my first experience with insulin, but I really do think that has a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That terrifying feeling that I felt where I really felt like my life was in danger, coupled with the fact that like I have to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Just sucks. And that's where it comes from. And then the fact that like, change is scary. And I feel like I keep having to go through change and to change things up. And like going on a pump is a really big change in my mind. Even though time and time again, people tell me, it's fine, it's great.
Right.
But I do think that I do follow a lot of like, other diabetic people on Instagram who are, I guess you would call them influencers. And there are a few of them who refused to go on a pump and then decided to do it. And watching them go through that change has kind of helped me a little bit. So I feel like the more that I see that and the more that people put that stuff out there and I can go on that journey with them, I will feel more comfortable.
Good. I'm glad it's helping you.
Yeah.
Also, some of those influencers are just doing the things they know you're feeling so that you'll follow them. So they do the whole like, I don't want to pump. I'm not doing that. Then they do that for about 6 months till they see their engagement drop. And they go, you know what? I think I might try a pump.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, is this season 2 of your little mini series? Okay. But no, I'm glad it helps you. Like, that's fantastic. I also completely understand like the situation you're in. Like I'm not saying why don't you just do it? I was being, facetious for the conversation. But the one thing I will say from just a practical point of view, and you don't need to be told this, you're a full grown lady, like you're 38 years old. The change part, I'm not 20 years ahead of you, but I'm pretty far ahead of you. It's never going to stop. Like, it's a fallacy to think you're going to get to stasis. Like, oh, as soon as the kids get through this part, or once they get to middle school, or after they're out of high school, or as soon as college is done, or as soon as I get another pay raise, or we move out of this house, or I get this room painted, like that's all bullshit. Like, that's never going to happen. You're never going to get to the end. The end is literally when you die. Like, there's no end in the middle. It's constant change. It's slower, so you don't see it sometimes, but we all sit around and do that thing. Like, I'll do this as soon as this happens, but that's never going to be the case. And I know that's upsetting to hear, but from my perspective, absolutely true. You are going to analyze this forever if you're waiting for something to become unchanged to make a decision. Does that make sense?
It does. Everything you're saying makes sense. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think about that every day. I mean, my kids are growing up before my eyes. My daughter's almost 10. And when I was diagnosed, she was a toddler. So, yeah, I mean, I'm fully aware of that. But I also am seeing all these changes in diabetes technology from when I was first diagnosed to what I have now and what I see now. And maybe part of me is waiting for something that I'll feel more comfortable with.
Could be.
To,
I'm just saying, if you wait for the cars to fly, you're going to miss out on the one that drives itself.
That's true.
Yeah, that's all. Like, these algorithms aren't bad. They're not bad at all. The ones that exist now they're all really rock solid. They're going to get better probably. But here's what I would ask you to talk about with your therapist. I don't know how you're going to feel if you try it, but you don't like the way you feel now. So what's it going to matter if you don't like the way you feel while you're trying it? If you're not going to like how you feel, then at least try the thing. You could always go back to your InPen. Does that seem reasonable to you, or does that not seem reasonable?
No, it definitely does seem reasonable. I mean, I wouldn't say it's bad all the time, but when I discuss these things with my endo too, not just my therapist, they look at my A1C and they're like, "You're fine. Don't make any changes."
I don't listen.
Because my A1C it's always been pretty well. I have been below 6.2 and between like 5.6 for the past, after having my son, at least the past 5 years.
But see, I would look at that and say, Courtney, look how well you're doing with an insulin pen. You know enough to use a pump. Like, you'll probably excel at this. Like, I didn't think it's that way. Yeah. Like, listen, may I make a suggestion to you? Whatever you think, write it down, then wonder what 180 degrees different of it is, and then do that. I think that would help you. because you just said something that made me think the exact opposite thing that it made you and the doctor think. The doctor's like, well, you have a great A1C. Why would you change? And I'm like, if you can do it with that, imagine what you could do with better tools. Not that InPen's not terrific, by the way. Fantastic. It's a great device. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that people need to use pumps. They don't have to. I'm saying you are describing a world where you don't want as many lows overnight, and an algorithm has the opportunity to maybe try to mitigate those for you. So since you're so good at this, slap the damn thing on and try. It's just an insulin delivery system, right? And then, it'll take you a couple of months to learn how the algorithm works and how to bolus for stuff. And then you can make a decision. If you don't like it, then throw it out and go get your pen back.
Sorry.
Should I chant "do it" at the end? Do it. I just don't want to I just don't want you to be upset. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm calling your episode?
Uh-oh. What?
Diabetes is back. It's from like the first 15 minutes you said that to your husband during you were like, diabetes is back. And yeah. I don't know why, like, it was the way you said it. I was like, I'm going to call the episode that. That's fantastic. It made it feel like you had a lake house and I don't know, you were feeding a freshwater dolphin and it was gone for 6 years. And then one day it came back and you ran inside. You're like, oh my God, the dolphin's back. I don't know. That's what it made me think of.
Well, a dolphin would be fun.
And better than diabetes.
Was terrifying.
Way better than diabetes. I think you're going to do it. Will you tell me how it goes?
I will.
Like you'll message me online and you'll be like, I tried to pump and I lost my mind and I killed our dog. So it's your fault. Like, or something like that. In a German murderous German rage, I went through my house and threw my Shih Tzu out the window.
I don't have two Shih Tzus.
My husband wasn't there because he called earlier the day to see how I was and heard it in my voice. So he did a little overtime that night. You're fantastic. I really like you, Courtney. I appreciate you coming on and doing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome listening to your show for so many years and getting so many tips. You are amazing and I appreciate you.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Did you know if just one person in your family has type 1 diabetes, you're up to 15 times more likely to get it too? So screen it like you mean it. One blood test can spot type 1 diabetes early. Tap now, talk to a doctor, or visit screenedfortype1.com for more info. A huge thanks to the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Learn more and get started today at contournext.com/juicebox. The conversation you just enjoyed was brought to you by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get started today and get your supplies from US Med. I can't thank you enough for listening. Please make sure you're subscribed or following in your audio app. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. If you're living with type 1 diabetes, the After Dark collection from the Juicebox Podcast is the only place to hear the stories that no one else talks about. From drugs to depression, self-harm, trauma, addiction, and so much more. Go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up in the menu, and click on After Dark. There you'll see a full list of all of the After Dark episodes. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you've noticed that the podcast sounds better, and you're thinking like, how does that happen? What you're hearing is Rob at Wrong Way Recording doing his magic to these files. So if you want him to do his magic to you, wrongwayrecording.com. You got a podcast? You want somebody to edit it? You want Rob.